Thanks very much, Jenny. So I wanted to pick up on this thought of social media and how I think it's changed the culture completely. And I think we should be really clear of the impact it's had and look at the solutions to how we relate to each other, because I think it is the source of a great deal of conflict. And there's a couple of areas I think it's worth just noting, that Amber's already mentioned some of them. I think there's the effect on our journalism, which I think has been enormous. So, years, I've worked at the BBC for a very long time, in the lobby for 7 years. When I came to Westminster, we were still using press association and other forms of agency to see where the stories were coming from and follow the news. They're still around and they're still influential, but I've got to say I haven't looked at PA for years, actually. I always look at Twitter. And Twitter is exceptional in Westminster in a way that, of course, it is not in the outside world at all, but it forms a huge influence in the lobby particularly, and Parliament as a whole. And I think it's the speed, the effect on the speed of our stories is significant. So where we may have had 2 or 3 news cycles in a day, maybe start somewhere in the morning, another one in our early afternoon, a third in the evening, going into the next morning, we're now looking at stories being updated hour on hour, sometimes minute by minute. Remind you of the famous, or the infamous, I should say, punch that never was in the 2019 election, which was there and gone within an hour, but it was made huge impact at the time, and it caused a great deal of pointing fingers and anger at the time as well. So the effect on the speed of our stories should not be underestimated by the use of social media. Everyone is a journalist now, so everyone can publish what they feel they have the right to say, which takes me on to the pressure that it also feeds in. I think both on journalism, there's a huge pressure for journalists to beat each other on Twitter, which puts pressure on them saying perhaps things that they shouldn't say or wouldn't say in another forum. And I always say to my teams, as we do across the BBC, and I'm sure in lots of media organisations, don't say anything that you wouldn't say on air. And that's a really, really important thing to remember, but it's a very, very easy one to forget, I find. And lots of our journalists who are not necessarily on air are caught either retweeting something or liking something that they really shouldn't do. And it's one of the things our new Director General has taken very seriously in terms of our impartiality, and I wholly agree with it, because it's an easy thing, which people then don't really realise the impact they have on our wider reputation. And I'd often be phoned by various parties saying, John Smith in children's unit or whatever it might be has tweeted this or said that, and they have no idea that it has a social comment on it, has a political comment. So it's really, really important in reputational terms as well. And then I just want to mention the obvious, which is the abuse and the way that people use social media to abuse and insult people, which again has been hugely well documented, of course. But it really takes you to security problems that Amber mentioned before, and it takes you to a wholly unsavoury way of public debate, and I think it's very worrying. I think if you look at the platforms, the social media platforms are just not willing to really sort of take this up, and of course it's incredibly complicated around free speech, etc. But it's something that I think in the longer term we need to address. Just one other thing, Jenny, if I may, is in our digital age, the way the political parties are using digital platforms to get their message across, which I think is worth noting. Which I've got to say, I don't blame them. It is a use to get videos straight to their audience, to their voters. But from a journalistic perspective, of course, it gets around to the key point of accountability, and the more they do that, the more we are unable to hold them to account and ask those really important questions. So that's something that's very much at the forefront of my mind as well.